Welcome to Women in the Know, where we discuss everything from politics and policy to relationships and marketing, from franchise growth to difficulties between franchisees and franchisors. Today's topic is about the common traits we see in successful women. And one of the common traits that we see is grit. This issue of the Franchise Woman magazine was released today, so you can take a look at it at thefranchisewoman.com. And we interviewed a lot of successful franchisors who all seem to demonstrate grit in different ways. So we wanted to talk about how women demonstrate it, how it varies, but the fact that that seems to be a very common thread in successful business owners.
Agreed. You know, it's interesting, this term grit has been thrown around the last few years a lot, but it's kind of an elusive term, right? And it actually encompasses several different, I call them markers, right? That makes up grit. And to your point, in the various articles on the Franchise Woman, and Paula in one of our interviews talked about it. It's this idea that this grit involves things like the drive, right? And it also requires not just to have a drive, but to have a certain purpose or certain passion behind what we do. We're going to have more grit if we're passionate about something, if there's a purpose behind it. Paula talked about the legacy, and Paula talked about making a difference in the lives of others. There was purpose behind her grit, 40-year career that she was in. And then the ladies that you interviewed for the Franchise Woman magazine. But there's, the optimism and adaptability and achievement drive and commitment and tenacity and purpose and passion. It's all kind of intertwined into this bigger term that we are calling grit. But to your point, it seems like the successful women possess that elusive skill above and beyond those that may be struggling.
Well, I think so. And it was an interesting, the issue this month about success, it was kind of a weird topic. Like, how do you approach success in terms of reporting about it? And so I ended up talking to these women about what they think drives their success. What is it that drives them toward a goal? And the common thread among three, we talked to Laura Spalding of Spalding Decon, we talked to Sivak of Goodbye Graffiti, and I talked to Carolyn Thurston of Wisdom C. They all had this never give up attitude. They all had this failure is not an option. Tell me I can't do it and I'm going to do it. It's all three of them, and they present very differently personality-wise, but they all had that underlying thing that drove them. I mean, Laura Spalding's was about not having a backup plan, and she doesn't like it when people do, because you've already considered the fact that you might not succeed in this goal. So I think it was really interesting, because I wasn't sure how that topic was going to go over in the magazine. But to have them tell you why they think they're successful, it's such an interesting conversation, because everybody answers it differently, yet the same.
It's the same. It boils down to a handful of factors that no backup plan, burn the boats, keep moving forward, that commitment, that passion, that purpose, the ability to adapt to whatever's going on. Because there's a bump in the road, so what? We're going to continue forward. We can adapt to it. We can work around it. And then one marker that I thought was interesting in all the stories that you mentioned is this courage, right? It requires a certain level of courage to take a risk and step out into the unknown, whether it's to invest in your own business as a franchisee or as a franchisor deciding to undertake becoming a franchisor. If you've never done it, that takes a lot of courage to step into that and do what is necessary, even though you have no experience doing that. But you're right, it's that single-mindedness. I will make this work no matter what, which means I have to have these other attributes so I can stay steady Eddie. hang in there through the ups and downs and the twists and turns that any business or any life will take.
I think I agree completely. And one thing that was crossing my mind when you were talking was that one of the things that they all faced as a challenge, particularly Carolyn and Laura Spalding mentioned it, was funding was difficult for them. For one reason or another. I mean, women do get less funding than men statistically. It can be a little bit more of a challenge. And I think that's a conversation we could probably delve into in some upcoming shows I think we have planned. But the fact that that was a challenge and they were not going to let it stop them.
Exactly.
They both just, as Laura said, they bootstrapped it. And Carolyn's like, I had to become my own bank. And it didn't matter that that was a challenge. And some people would hit that barrier and stop and say, well, oh, well, this isn't for me. But they had these challenges and said, well, how am I going to, change my path a little bit to still achieve the goal that I want? So I think that grit it's kind of fun to watch.
It's very fun to watch. I totally agree. And what you described there, this willingness, because there's such great passion, there's such great purpose behind these ideas that these women had, and the willingness to do whatever it took, including do what is counter the feminine nature. The feminine nature is about safety and about security, right? They went counter that nature and said, I got to step out. I got to be courageous. I'm okay. I need to bootstrap. The financing isn't available. That's an immense amount of, I know where I'm going and I'm committed to it. And I know ultimately this is going to be successful. I believe in myself enough. And at the same time, courageous enough to go counter our nature, which is safe, secure, comfort zone, right? That's kind of where we typically go back to, and they didn't. They stepped out.
Yeah, it was a very fun. It was a much more fun issue than I thought, and it was a much more interesting topic than I expected. So I'm really glad that we got to talk to Paula about that as well. So if you're just tuning into Women in the Know, go back and watch Paula Pizarro's interview, because it really gives you a lot of insight into what it takes to climb these ladders of success.
Exactly. Well, Elizabeth, that closes the segment on Women in the Know, and we are now going to another one of our sponsors. So we'll be back after this break.